Trees don't walk. That's what I believed my whole life. I grew up around woods. I've camped, hiked, and slept under branches that creak all night. Trees make sounds. Animals move. Wind plays tricks. Your mind fills the gaps. That was my logic. Until the weekend I rented a remote cabin by a lake and woke up to find the tree line closer. Not it looks different. Not maybe I misremembered. It was closer in a measurable way. The shadow of a pine that used to fall short of the window now touched the glass. The little strip of yard behind the cabin had shrunk, like the forest took a step forward while I slept. My brain tried to save me with excuses. Maybe I'm groggy. Maybe the light is weird. Maybe the angle is wrong. Then I looked at the ground. The soil was wet and dark, pressed down with deep dents that weren't boot prints and weren't animal tracks. They weren't paws, hooves, or tires. They were wide, heavy impressions, spaced evenly, like something big had stepped there slowly and carefully. And there were no snapped branches, no messy trail, just clean, deliberate marks. That was the moment a cold thought landed in my chest. The trees moved while I slept. I'm not telling this like a campfire story. I'm not trying to sound poetic. I'm telling it the way it happened because I lived it. And it changed the way I look at dark tree lines forever. If you've ever been alone at night and felt like the woods were leaning toward you, listening, you'll understand this. I found the cabin listing online. It was cheap, too cheap. No real reviews, only a few blurry photos. A small wooden cabin near a lake, perfect for unplugging. The description was short, quiet, remote, no reception. That sounded great. I wanted 2 nights where nobody could reach me. The drive started normal. Then the road narrowed from highway to gravel to dirt. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. No birds, no insects buzzing. Even the wind felt weak, like it didn't want to disturb the branches. I rolled down the window and listened. I heard my own breathing and the tires on gravel. That was it. After a while, I passed an old metal gate hanging open. Rusted, crooked, no sign, no warning. It looked like something that used to be locked, but had been left open a long time. Like whoever owned it stopped caring, or stopped coming back. The road got worse after the gate. Trees pressed close on both sides like a tunnel. The light turned green and dim, like I drove under a living roof. Then the cabin appeared near the lake. It looked like the photos, but my body noticed something off before my brain named it. Dark windows. Porch boards scratched and weathered. The air around it felt colder than the road behind me, like the shade had weight. And the front door was slightly open. Just a crack. I sat in the car staring at it, arguing with myself. Maybe the host forgot to shut it. Maybe wind pushed it. Maybe someone's inside. I didn't want to turn around after driving all that way, but I also didn't want to walk into a bad situation alone. I did it anyway, because people convince themselves the world is normal. The porch creaked once, loud in the silence. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the cabin smelled like damp wood. Not dusty, not abandoned, just wet, like the walls had soaked up years of fog. The place was clean, too clean compared to the porch. A couch, a small kitchen, a table, a bed in the back room. On the table sat a single sheet of paper, perfectly flat, like it had been placed there that day. Not a welcome note. Rules.
Do not leave food outside. Do not whistle after dark. If you hear your name from the trees, do not answer. Lock the door before sleeping.
I stared at it and let out a laugh that sounded fake even to me. People love rules horror. I'd seen plenty of stories like that online. It felt like the host trying to be clever. But the paper didn't look like a joke. No smiley face. No have fun. No signature. Just those lines in clear block letters. I turned the page over. Blank. I told myself it was a gimmick. Still, I left the paper on the table where I could see it, like a reminder to lock up. I walked to the back door and looked out. The lake was still, too still, like a sheet of dark glass. Behind the cabin, the trees stood close, tighter than the photos showed. The clearing was just a thin strip of yard before the forest started, and the trunks looked arranged, not random. The trees formed a barrier, a line. I couldn't explain why that bothered me, so I did what people do when discomfort rises. I got busy. I unpacked, ate, and turned on a lamp. I played music softly, just to put a human sound in the space. Even with music, the cabin felt like it was holding its breath. Night came fast. The darkness outside wasn't normal darkness. It wasn't the kind where you can still see shapes in the distance. It was thick, like the trees swallowed the last light and kept it. I remembered the rules note. I didn't whistle. Not because I believed it, but because I didn't want to test it. I made sure no food was outside. Then I locked the door before bed. I told myself it was common sense. I turned off the lamp and lay down. The cabin creaked as the temperature dropped, wood settling. Normal sounds. Then, around midnight, I heard a scrape outside. Slow, heavy, like something dragging across damp soil. I sat up and held my breath. Silence. Then the scrape again, closer this time, still slow, like it had all the time in the world. My mind ran through options. A bear? Bears don't drag like that. A deer? Too heavy. A person? Why so slow? I got out of bed and moved to the window, careful, each step planned. I pulled the curtain back the smallest amount. Outside was black, but I could see the edge of the yard and the tree line beyond it. Something moved between the trunks. Not fast, not like an animal. It shifted, like a tall shape sliding through shadow, then stopped perfectly still, like it knew I was watching. My skin went cold. I stepped back from the window and tried to breathe quietly. That's when I heard it. A whisper from the woods. Soft, close enough to feel real. It said my name. My real name. The one I hadn't spoken out loud since arriving. My stomach dropped like I missed a step. I froze, trying to make sense of it, and the whisper came again, slightly different, like someone testing the sound. My name, repeated. I felt a stupid urge to answer, like correcting a misunderstanding, like calling out to a neighbor. Then my eyes flicked to the table, to the rule I had laughed at earlier. If you hear your name from the trees, do not answer. My throat tightened. I stayed silent. Outside, the whisper paused. Then it tried again, softer, closer, shaping my name like it was learning the edges of it. It stretched the syllables, made it sound familiar and wrong at the same time. I backed away and sat on the bed, staring into the dark. I didn't sleep. Not because I was wide awake, but because I was afraid of what might happen if I did. Sometime later, I heard a sound that didn't come from an animal or the wind. A deep, slow creak. like wood bending. Not the cabin wood. Outside. From the forest.
Then another creak. And another. Like multiple trunks shifting their weight. It sounded like something repositioning itself. Like the forest was moving pieces on a board. Then it stopped. Silence returned, heavy as a blanket. I stayed awake until sunrise. When light finally leaked through the window, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like permission. I stepped outside immediately. The air was damp. The lake was still. No birds sang. Morning felt wrong. Then I looked behind the cabin. The tree line was closer. Not, I think. Not, maybe. Closer. The strip of yard had shrunk. The trees stood nearer to the porch, like they had leaned forward overnight. I walked to a spot I remembered, where a pine had lined up with the corner of the window. It wasn't there anymore. It stood several steps to the left. My brain tried to fight it. Trees don't move. But my eyes didn't care. I looked at the ground. Deep dents pressed into the wet soil, fresh and dark, spaced like slow steps. I crouched and touched one. The earth was soft, as if it had been pressed down recently. I stood up and stared into the forest. Between the trunks, the shadows seemed to watch back. I went to my car and tried to start it. Click. Nothing. Again. Click. Dead battery. It made no sense. I hadn't left anything on. The car had been fine. I popped the hood and stared at the engine like I could argue with it into working. Everything looked normal. That's when a new fear settled in. I wasn't just unnerved. I was trapped. No reception. Dead car. Miles of forest road behind me. I walked back inside and looked at the paper again. The rules didn't feel funny now. They felt like someone survived long enough to write them down. I tried to be logical. I told myself I would leave on foot if the car didn't start by afternoon. I drank water, ate a little, and kept the flashlight close. As the day dragged on, the cabin felt tighter. The corners looked darker than they should. The air smelled more like wet bark, like the forest had crept closer and its scent followed. At dusk, I heard tapping on the cabin wall. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Not random. A signal. I stood in the center of the room, not moving. The tapping moved, as if something walked along the outside of the cabin, tapping the wood as it went. Tap, tap, tap. Then it stopped at the back door. The doorknob turned gently, just enough to make the metal click. My heart slammed into my throat. A voice came from outside. It sounded like me. My voice, my tone, my rhythm. Open the door. My blood went cold. The voice spoke again, calmer, almost kind. Just open it a little. My hands shook. I couldn't make my body move. Then the voice changed the approach, like it learned a better angle. Please, open up. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't threatening. It was patient. It was trying to sound normal, like it belonged. I stayed silent. The doorknob turned harder. The door shook once, a small test, then stopped. The tapping began again around the cabin. Window, wall, window, wall, like fingers moving in a circle. I backed away from the walls and stood under the ceiling light, like light could protect me. Footsteps began on the roof, slow, heavy. 1 step,
Pause. Another. Pause. The ceiling creaked as if something pressed down with weight. Dust drifted onto the floor. I stared upward, barely breathing. From above came a sound like scratching, not frantic, deliberate. Then the voice came again, but this time it didn't come from the door. It came from the chimney area, distorted like someone speaking through a narrow tunnel. Sleep. The word hit me like a drug. My eyelids suddenly felt heavy. My body swayed slightly, like standing became too much effort. The voice whispered again, softer. Sleep, and we will carry you. I bit the inside of my cheek until pain snapped me back. I forced myself to move, to keep my blood loud, to keep my mind from slipping. Outside, the forest creaked again, multiple deep bends of wood, like trunks shifting and settling. Then the tapping returned, faster. Not 3 taps anymore, many taps, all around, like the cabin was surrounded. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't fight trees. I couldn't call anyone. So I did the only thing I could think of. I read the rules again, line by line, like a prayer. Then I remembered something that made my stomach drop. The night before bed, I'd taken a trash bag outside because I didn't want the cabin to smell. Trash smells like food. Trash is an invitation. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it out the back window. The beam caught the yard for a second. The trash bag wasn't there. It wasn't torn open like an animal got into it. It was simply gone, as if someone removed it neatly. Then from outside, close to the window, the voice whispered one word. Good. That single word scared me more than the scratching. It wasn't scary like a growl. It was scary like approval, like training. The tapping and roof steps came in waves for hours. Sometimes it would stop long enough for hope to rise, then return closer, more confident. I stayed upright through the night, too afraid to sit, too afraid to close my eyes. When dawn finally came, everything stopped at once. Tapping, footsteps, voices, like the forest decided the night shift was over. I didn't wait. I grabbed water, keys, flashlight, and left. The yard behind the cabin had shrunk again. The trees were closer to the porch than the day before. The ground was full of fresh dents, circling the cabin like a patrol. I walked toward where the dirt road should be, trying to follow my memory. After 10 minutes, the road didn't look the same. It felt narrower. Trees stood closer to the edges, squeezing the path. Ahead, where the old gate should have been, there was nothing. No opening, just trunks.
Solid. A wall of trees. As I stood at that wall of trunks, I noticed one detail. The bark looked scuffed, as if it had rubbed against other bark recently. Sap glistened in streaks, as if the trees had sweated from effort. The ground was packed down in an arc, not trampled, pressed, and the air smelled like crushed pine needles, like the forest had shifted into place. I turned back toward the cabin to get my bearings. I walked fast. Then I slowed. Then I stopped. The cabin wasn't where it had been. I reached the spot where the porch should sit. There were only trees, dense, quiet, tight, like the cabin had never existed. Panic rose like heat in my chest. A voice called from between the trunks, friendly and clear. "Over here!" My voice again. It sounded like guidance, like help. I didn't answer. I didn't follow it. Behind me, wood creaked. I turned. The trees behind me were shifting. Not fast, but real.
Trunks leaning and settling, moving in tiny steps, closing space like a crowd. It wasn't chasing. It was herding, pushing me toward whatever it wanted. I ran, not blindly, toward the lake, because water meant open space. I burst into a clearing and saw the lake, still, dark, silent. Along the shore, the trees leaned closer, forming a border. I ran down the shoreline looking for anything, a dock, a trail, a boat. Then I saw it. An old canoe flipped upside down, half buried in mud. I dragged it free with shaking arms, flipped it, and shoved it into the water. No paddles. I grabbed thick sticks and used them like paddles. I pushed off. As the canoe slid into the lake, the tree line behind me leaned forward. One trunk angled over the water like it was peering in. Then another, and another. The forest wasn't rushing anymore. It was watching. Halfway across, the water beneath the canoe rippled. A shadow moved under me, wide, slow, too big to be a fish. The canoe lifted slightly, as if something nudged it from below. My stomach lurched. The shadow circled once, then drifted away, like it was letting me know it could tip me whenever it wanted. I paddled harder until my arms burned. When I reached the far shore, I dragged the canoe up and ran into those trees. For the first time, the forest felt normal. I heard birds. I felt wind. The silence wasn't heavy. I kept walking until I hit a paved road. A real road, with a sign and tire tracks. I stood on it shaking, looking back. From there, the tree line looked ordinary, calm, innocent, like it could hide anything. I got help. I made it home. I thought it was over. 2 days later, I checked my shoes and found something stuck deep in the tread. A fresh pine needle, bright green, not dried out, not broken, like it had been placed there. I hadn't been near any trees since the trip. That needle didn't make sense, unless the forest didn't let me leave empty-handed. Now, right before sleep, I sometimes hear a soft creak outside my window. Not wind, not the building settling. A slow bend of wood, like a trunk shifting its weight. I never look, because I learned the real trap isn't claws or teeth. It's attention. It's response. It's permission. If you ever hear your name come from the trees, don't answer. Not who's there. Not stop. Not even a whisper. Stay silent. Leave. And don't assume the path you came in will still be there in the morning.